Hi guys, in today's video we're going to go through something that absolutely transformed the way that I train horses and think of them from a biomechanical point of view. Like when I learnt this, it blew my mind. I was like, why are people not talking about this more? Because it makes so much logical sense. So we're talking about vertical balance. So vertical balance is when the horse is working evenly through both their front legs and they're lifting up. It allows them to lift up through their back and go out into that nice contact that we want. So for them to do that, we're going to look at them first of all from a biomechanical point of view, and then later on how that affects you when you're riding them. So brace yourself for the world's worst art lesson. This is the rib cage. So at the top we've got the vertebrae, which in this case will be the withers and the spinal processes. You've got the sternum down the bottom. Either side you've got the scapula. So the shoulder blades on a horse, they float. They're not attached like ours are with a collarbone. Then you've got the humerus either side of that, and then you've got the legs, which are anatomically correct there. So the muscles, we've got the pectoral muscles here, linking to here. Here we've got the serratus for something that I can't say, I've practiced it loads. And then at the top we've got the trapezius muscles. So pretend that this is all very, very even for like a perfect setup. This whole setup is called the thoracic sling. And what you need them to do is we need them to engage. So shortening the underline, using their core, and it pushes them up. So it lifts through the ribcage, lifts the withers up, and that's when the horse, if their withers are up, they can come out and round into the contact with their neck. For a horse to do this, they have to be even in both their front legs, because otherwise you get the gap at the top. So what happens is, if one of the shoulder blades sit slightly higher, so the horse is putting more weight into this front leg, they're leaning like this slightly, it just blocks the rib cage from coming up. There's not the room at the top for it to come up. So although you might get the horse in an outline as such, quite often they'll be on the forehand, they'll compensate through their back, and it won't be a true connection from behind. So a lot of the time what you see with horses that have this, or horses that slouch and don't use themselves, they're not in that horizontal balance where they're pushing from behind and coming up in front, is you'll get like a dip here. So a lot of saddle problems come from horses having that gap behind the shoulder blade. And people, you know, I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, you know, you need to build up the trapezius muscle, you need to build up this muscle here. It's a sheep muscle, you're not really going to bulk that out. So what you actually is the problem is the fact that the horse is slouching, it's got poor posture, and that's quite often because it's crooked, or they're not getting them to shorten the underline and lift up through this gap. Because as they lift up, that pushes that shape out. So you can do things on the ground like your wither lift for this, where you run your hand underneath the tummy and get the horse to lift. Walk poles is also very good to get them to do that sort of stuff as well, especially if they're raised. So how does that relate to us riding? So this is useful for both show jumpers and dressage riders, and eventers, because I do a bit of both. So you've got your horse on a circle. We'll pretend that's a perfect circle. So if your horse is even on both their front legs, they're going to quite happily, this is a great horse, follow the line of the curve, because they're in balance. So they can do that, they can keep following that perfect line of the circle. If a horse is falling in, so they've got more weight through their inside front leg than their outside front leg, they will have to use their neck to balance that. So it's a bit like us if we're carrying a bucket of heavy water or shopping, we're going to use our head and neck to balance ourselves the opposite way. So they'll get shorter through here, they'll flex to the outside, and this is where a lot of riders will want to grab hold of that outside rein because they can feel the horse is falling in this way, and to stop that, because when we're younger we're told use the reins to steer, they will feel like they cannot let go of that outside rein because otherwise they're just going to fall over or do a tiny little circle on the spot. So what we actually need to do, if this is happening, is think of the horse's front legs as like an old school set of scales. So if they've got more weight into one leg than the other, we need to counterbalance that. So things we can do to get them to then level back up again, we can put a little bit of weight to the outside stirrup, so you're not pushing through the stirrup because that'll push you the other way. You're almost just thinking about bringing your hips and your weight just slightly that side, just scooping the weight up off that inside leg, placing it in the outside leg. The things that you can do with your body is open your shoulders, wrap that inside leg on, push them over, even the contacts. If they're heavy in one hand and loose on the other, think, right, actually, it'll make you want to hold the outside rein, but you need to give on that one and just try and push them so they're evenly into both hands. You can raise slightly the inside rein, and you can think open with the outside rein. You can still use it as a guiding aid, but don't pull back on it. So that should help you get back to this neutral balance here. So you'll see this a lot in like jumping ponies. They're leaning, the kids are just clinging onto their outside rein. Not ideal. Not easy to correct, but I find the more you find the logic behind it, the easier it's going to be for you to correct. So the opposite of that, if you've got the horse that's falling out, so their weight is coming through their outside shoulder. I'm going to go a little bit lower. So the weight is coming through their outside shoulder more than their inside. So in this instant, again, because they're falling this way, they're going to use the neck to balance, so they're going to go the opposite way. They're going to bend to the inside, and often too much inside flexion will happen here, so you're not following the line of the curve. The lateral bend isn't correct. This is when the rider will desperately want to pull on the inside rein. So you'll see this a lot with, again, with the jumping pony or dressage horses, like if they're doing like a 10-metre circle, the rider will feel that the shoulder's going out and they'll go, oh God, and they'll grab that inside rein, creating, it's like a cycle of, now I've got too much inside bend, now the shoulders are going to fall out more. The legs are attached to the shoulders, not the face. So we've got to focus on steering these shoulders, not steering from the head. It's right, if you've got like a stiff riding school horse, you might be able to steer them from the head, but when you've got these nice, warm bloods, quite a lot of them are hypermobile, they're going to really overbend. So we need to support them. So if the shoulder is coming this way, again, we need to put it back in. So ways that you can do this is you can put a little bit of weight into your inside stirrup. So again, you're just lifting them off. Think about transferring that weight from the outside back to the inside. And you really want to think about supporting this shoulder. So you've got things like outside leg aid. You can use the outside rein, just a little half hold. Again, soften that inside. It's going to be like, that's physically impossible. But you constantly think, if one's heavy and one's loose, give on the heavy, push them into the loose. By doing that, you're going to start supporting the horse, and you'll start evening them up, and that's when you'll get that straightness. I think a lot of people do it in dressage as well, with the 10, like I said, with the 10-metre circles. They get halfway around and they're like, yeah, we're nailing it, and then they're like, oh, I need to make it back, because this will quite often cause the horse to rush. So the horse is out of balance, so they'll speed up, and then you can see them just, you've all seen them, the horses are going off across the arena, and people are just hanging on for dear life.
Oh, you're going too fast. Goodbye.
And actually it needs to be that supportive of the outside shoulder. Ride the shoulders, ride the legs, don't ride the head. The head and neck are always going to be the result of where the body is. So when you've got this nice neutral balance, like we said earlier, it gives them that space to lift up through the back, come out, and then you can ride the lateral bend. And that's basically it. So hopefully that's really helpful for you, and you can put it into place. Let me know in the comments how you get on and if you practice it.